So, not long ago, whenever it was announced that Pete Golding, the former Alabama Crimson Tide defensive coordinator, was set to make a move from Alabama to become the defensive coordinator for Ole Miss, I think a lot of Alabama fans had some questions. Specifically, would more moves be coming on this coaching staff? And I think a lot of those questions revolved around the other coordinator position. And today, Alabama fans everywhere woke up to their curiosities being answered, as reports are coming out stating that Bill O'Brien is set to make a return to the NFL and the New England Patriots, and we've got to break this down. Before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments. Give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Are you happy that Alabama is going in a different direction in their offensive coordinator position? And let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed this content, be sure to like and comment down below, as those interactions are massive to content creators such as myself. And we're on a push to 20,000 subscribers. I'd love nothing more than to have you a part of this unbelievable community. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And there's a lot for us to unpack here. We need to talk about some of the names that you constantly hear in circulation in regards to the Alabama offensive coordinator job, though I do need to preface it by saying there is no inside information here. We're all just fans talking about names we've all heard, and I'm just going to be giving my input on it, and I'd love to hear y'all's input down in the comments. That's what makes this so much fun, but let's really start with Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien has had an interesting tenure with the Alabama Crimson Tide, because if you look at where the offense has ranked, they've been among the top offenses in all of college football. But this season specifically, if you watched, things just weren't clicking. And it's easy to point to the fact that Jamison Williams wasn't there. It's easy to point to the fact that Mechie wasn't there. But at the same time, there was still talent in this offense. And while the receivers were growing, they were young, and towards the end of the year, a lot of those freshmen really started coming on, which is to be expected. They need game reps. They need time to learn the system. They need time to adjust to the college game. There was still talent in this offense. And what was more questionable to me was the fact that the offense didn't look like it had any clear direction as to what type of offense they wanted to be. It looked like an amalgamation of so many different things, and really, what I thought was the most intriguing is Alabama's offense seemed the most successful when the play broke down and Bryce Young had to play backyard scramble football. That seems to be when Alabama's offense was its deadliest, which isn't really where you want to be. The Crimson Tide had a ton of talent on these teams, but it was just never really coming together, specifically this season. Last season, obviously, they went to a national championship. They had a fantastic year, but this season, it never came together. And if you watched the games, you could tell something just wasn't clicking. Once again, the offensive ranked looked fine, but something wasn't clicking. There was no clear identity, which led many Crimson Tide fans to wonder whether a move could be made at the end of the year. Well, lo and behold, both the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator will field new faces during the 2023 season. And we've talked about the defensive coordinator position before. Look, if I'm going to be perfectly honest, if Jeremy Pruitt is able to clear anything from the NCAA and the SEC, that's the guy I would bring in. Why? Because he has a familiarity with Nick Saban. He has a familiarity with the Alabama Crimson Tide. The old players know him, and when he was last at Alabama, that defense was ferocious. So I just think that it would be a good match. It would be a good move for Alabama and Jeremy Pruitt if he's able to go. But we've also heard names such as Leonard and Schumann in connection, and all of the above would be phenomenal hires. But now we're about to have those same conversations for the offensive coordinator, and multiple names have consistently popped up whenever this theory has arose. What could Alabama do if Bill O'Brien goes to the NFL? And the first name that has been popping up frequently in articles is Jeff Lebby, the current offensive coordinator with the Oklahoma Sooners, and I want to put this one to bed soon. Per multiple reports, Alabama reached out to gauge his interest, but per several reports, he is set to stay at the Oklahoma Sooners, and this does make sense. He's an Oklahoma guy. He played for the Sooners, and I think it makes sense for him to want to stay with his alma mater and really grow as an offensive coordinator, especially coming off of a year where they lost some games, but they lost them by a close margin. So if you're a coach on that Oklahoma staff, you understand that this was not the year you expected to have. This was not the year you wanted to have, but you had a lot of losses come in a slim margin, and you feel like if you can correct some things, you can go out there and have a much better campaign in 2023, and I'm really interested to see if that comes to fruition. So I don't know that Jeff Lebby is going to be the guy, but there are several other names that consistently pop up. Names such as Dan Mullen, who was a head coach in this league, coached the Florida Gators, and is an offensive guru, and this would be an intriguing hire. I think it's always great when you can get someone with that much experience to come in and take that role. Dan Mullen's offenses have always been tricky, and I think if you get him to focus solely on the offensive coordinator position, it would be dangerous. Now, a lot of SEC fans remember Dan Mullen in the last few months of his employment with Florida, whenever he was asked about some of the recruiting battles Florida was in, and he famously said, "We worry about recruiting after the season ends." Well, that's not going to fly at Alabama, but luckily for Dan Mullen, the Alabama Crimson Tide have so many elite recruiters on this staff, and he would certainly be asked to pull his weight. There is no doubt about that. But there are a lot of elite recruiters on this Crimson Tide staff. So luckily for Nick Saban, if you're looking at the situation, Dan Mullen is an intriguing name, one we have to watch out for. Another name that gets tossed around for every open offensive coordinator job in college is Joe Brady at this point, and why not throw the name in the hat? Every other offensive coordinator job that comes open at a major institution, his name is thrown in, so why don't we just add it here? Look, Joe Brady would be an amazing hire. Once again, we have to question the reality of it, question how realistic it would be, and that's where I kind of don't know that he's going to be the guy. You hear about this name all the time whenever offensive coordinator jobs opened up, and for good reason. What he architected for that LSU passing attack during their national championship campaign, it was wild. Now, let's get one thing clear. That LSU offense was loaded with talent. Just look at what those guys are doing in the NFL. Joe Burrow is having a hell of a career, and it just started. Justin Jefferson does insane things at the wide receiver position, and so does Jamar Chase. So that was a loaded offense, but still, Joe Brady really changed the way that passing attack came together, and because of that, he's been in connection to a lot of jobs. Once again, I don't know how realistic I find this one, just because his name is always brought up, and lo and behold, it's never been the guy at an offensive coordinator position since that. So this is one we have to watch. But one thing I do know is I'm going to trust Saban with whoever he hires. And the last time I said this, I had people comment down and say, yeah, but Saban hired Bill O'Brien. Saban hired Pete Golding. And sure, those two may not have worked out like everyone expected, but at the end of the day, what are you batting? And when I asked that, Nick Saban has made more really solid hires than hires that just didn't work out. So I'm going to put faith in him to make a good hire, because a lot of the hires he's made have just been good hires. They've worked out. More have worked out than have not worked out. So really interested in seeing where this goes. Super interested in hearing from all Alabama fans. Drop down in the comments. Let me know who you think you would like to see as the next offensive coordinator for the Crimson Tide. This is going to be a wild offseason, and Nick Saban is going to be making major moves. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you think. That's it. See ya.